start now. All right. So I'll just start sharing my screen in a couple of seconds. Just give me a second. Yeah. So hope I mean all of you are able to see me clearly. Yeah. So I will just start with my sharing my screen. So yeah, I hope my screen is visible. If it's not, you just ping me in chat and I'll be helping you with screen sharing again. So in the last class itself, we were looking at the data types and a couple of more in like data types like list, strings, boolean, and a lot more about set, tuples, and dictionaries. Today we'll go in a little notch higher with regards to what do you do when you want to actually store your data into a place where you can access the data. So the way that you access any sort of a data and you perform any sort of function or like an action with that is basically stored in the form of a function. So have you guys learned about functions before? Has anyone able to create a function by himself? Ping me in chat if you guys have already used functions before, and if you guys have already learned about functions in your previous semesters. Yeah, Premanand, I see your hand is raised. Have you learned about function before?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, as soon as you ask, I asked you to unmute and you unmute, just please start speaking so that otherwise I'll have to again mute you and unmute you. Yeah, have you learned about functions before?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think you guys have an idea about functions. So I'll just go on little, in depth about this and we'll see then more in practical about this. So the idea of functions is that whenever you want to have lines of your code that are going to be reused again and again, those all are used to be, those are stored in the function. So basically, if you see the sample out here itself, so these are the libraries, don't worry about the library names for now, but basically they're used is like np.array is basically used to create like an array, or basically like understand this like in any list. Okay. So if you take any list of an example, let's say list 1 that we saw in the last lecture itself. So in list 1, you want to save this like 3 or 4 different lists. Then that can be stored in the form of a like data. And as soon as you want to actually use these functions for like you want to like let's say find values and find a sum of it, you can use these like function, which is like we have defined function 1. Function 1 is basically taking the value which is equal to sum of all the columns that you have by 2. This will be like a very superficial explanation. We'll come to this in detail when we actually go about learning about pandas and these different libraries. All right. So we'll just first introduce the libraries and then we'll come back to the functions. But I wanted to have just an idea about what functions are before we actually start learning about them. So we'll just go through like the modules, which is like which is pandas and numpy. So in the last class itself, we were learning about data types. So we'll just continue from there. So pandas is just another like module or like a library for using these data types. So let's just like we had learned about lists and tuples, like let's how we had learned about list and tuples in the previous ones. So yes, it's like we had learned about list in here. It is used as a ordered collection of items. The same way, the list you can store in the form of like list 1 is equal to list 1, 2, a number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same way, pandas is like a library that has a data type called pandas data frame. So data frame is just like a list, but the only difference is that the list is a one-dimensional data type, which is basically that it has only a list of numbers or list of integers or list of strings or list of any simple item. But in the case of these data frames are basically list of lists, or you can say that these are multi-dimensional lists. That is, they have your list basically is a list of columns also out here, column 1, column 2, and column 3, and also a list of your index or basically your rows. So these rows 1, 2, 3 are basically rows. So a pandas data frame is defined as a basically data structure that is basically having 2 dimensions. That is, one is a row and one is a column. So this data structure that is storing a list, a list of rows and a list of columns alongside each other is basically referred to as a data frame. All right. And a data frame is basically having rows and columns, but in case your data frame is such that it has only one single column and like multiple rows, then that data frame is referred to as a series. So just imagine our data frame is like a table which has like 5 columns and 5 rows. But in that table, if only the first column is useful for me, so if I drop the rest of the columns, and what is left out of that, this one single column is basically referred to as a series. All right, so the point is that you need to have an idea about what is series. Series is just a column having many different rows, whereas data frame is like having multiple rows as well as multiple columns. So you see the definition out here. Series is basically a one-dimensional labeled array capable of holding any data type. So it can be like a list, it can be like a tuple, it can be again. If you see, when we'll come to Spider and we'll come to implementation of your, any data science problem, your data frames are going to be your main source of a data structure that is going to be used for storing any variable. Whereas when you come to like NumPy, which will come together in forward, then that NumPy is basically an array that is like a list of tuples or a list of sets or a list of dictionaries that will be storing your numerical values. So we will come to that when we discuss about NumPy. But for now, what you can remember is any sort of tabular data that you want to store, you can store in the data structure of data frame. All right. So, as I mentioned, like the series is basically a data structure that is storing a single column for a data frame. And this data that you store is basically stored in a data frame with the help of collection of series. So just like I said, that series, just like I said, the string is a collection of characters. List is a character, is a collection of your items. The same way, a data frame is a collection of different series. That's what I mean about data frame that we were having to do about pandas. Now we'll come to what is NumPy. So NumPy is just another library again like pandas, and the main data frame, or the main data structure that is used by NumPy is referred to as an array. So if you're coming from Java background, if you're coming from JavaScript background, you might know what is an array, or like if you're coming from C also, you might know what is an array. Array is just another data structure that is going to store values in the form of like a structured index. That is basically you'll be having rows and columns indexed from 0 to infinity in terms of columns, and in also the same in terms of rows. So in both of those scenarios, your like columns and index, in columns and rows will have different indexes, and based on that index, you'll be able to store. Let's say you want an index for like this 12 number, or this 16 number, then the index for the 12 or the 16 number for 12 number is 0, 0, and the index for the 16 number is 1, 1. So the point is that your index is basically used for retrieving the element out of this NumPy array. Nothing complex. You might have already come across this when you are working in previous like languages about what is array and what is different types of arrays. What is one-dimensional array? What is n-dimensional array? What is two-dimensional array? So that is already like in your knowledge previously. But the only concept to remember that here is that you can use arrays with the help of NumPy in Python. By default, array is not an inherent data structure in Python. You can use it with the help of this NumPy library, and it also has like a lot of functionality that you can use. So out here when you use array also, when you're creating an array, what is this arrange? This arrange is basically your function that is going to create an array from 0 to 14. So when you pass the arrange having an input 15, that means that basically your this a variable is going to store the array starting from 0 up until 14. And when you say this reshape 3, 5, that is going to basically have the index of your third row. It will like store in 3 rows, and it will create 5 columns. So if you see, there is 1 row, this is 2 rows, this is 3 row, and again the index of this is 1. This 0 is 0, 1, 0, 0, 1 is 0, 1, and this 14 the similar way is 3, 5. So that is the whole point. That basically, again, it is 2, 5. So that's the whole point. The index of array, or like this NumPy array is basically starting from 0, and so this 0 is 0, 0, and this 14 is 2, 4. That's the whole index of your NumPy array. So this is like a little more theoretical right now. So we'll just go through the practical code once. So this function would basically have, I mean, before this, do you have any doubts in about what is a array and what is a pandas data frame? Do you have any doubt about that? If you have any doubt, you can just raise your hand and ask me right now.
Sir, yesterday class నాకు రాలేదు sir.
Okay, I don't see any doubt. So you can maybe, if you have a doubt, you can ask right now or we can go forward.
Yesterday class ఏమైనా యూట్యూబ్ లో ఉంటే షేర్ చేయండి సార్ వాట్సాప్ గ్రూప్ లో.
Got it. So we'll continue. So, I mean, as I was coming back to learning about functions, now that we have an idea about what is pandas and what is numpy, we can directly now go into the code of functions. So what have we done here? Basically, we had like imported pandas, just like, I mean, if you remember in the last class itself, you had learned about this import keyword. This import keyword is basically used for creating like a file inside of your working directory. So like you can imagine that this import pandas as pd is going to include all of your files that you have installed with the help of pip install, and will import that into your working directory of your this function, and then only you can be able to create your function and use these pandas and numpy libraries inside of your function. So you can imagine that this import is basically to get all the material or all the code of this pandas library from the Python package installer to the working directory, that is basically your file, and then it will be able to carry out this operation, which is like creating a value, I mean, creating and adding the values in your array. So that's about what is import keyword. Then we'll come to what is this data, this variable. So what have we done here? We have created a data variable, which is going to be storing an array, which is again going to be like a list of lists. So this array I have created, which is basically you're having items of 1, 2, 3, and up until it's going to like 100, 120, 130. Then I randomly have set up this integers, and this is going to be like a 5 cross 3 array. And this array is basically stored into your data frame with the help of pandas library. So whenever you're going to create an array, you'll need a library known as numpy, and it's going to have an index that is basically an np.array. It will basically take in your list of elements that you want to store in the array. And the same way, this data frame, whenever you want to create a data frame, whenever you want to create a table out of it, you will need a library called pandas, right? So as we discussed before about pandas and numpy, this data frame library is a pandas library. And what we have done in the df equal to pd.dataframe data is basically we had taken in pandas data frame out by creating this data variable, and that data variable we have converted into data frame and stored in the df library and the df variable. And this df.columns is basically going to store your like ABC as going to be the string. It will create a list that is basically list will contain A, comma B, comma C. So this list, when I'm typing this part out, this list ABC is basically nothing but, you can imagine it like this way. A, comma B, comma C. All right. Is about this. Basically, this columns is going to store this list, and it will name this all of these data frame into like a list. So basically, this is going to be A column, the whole thing. This whole thing is going to be the B column, and you get the hang, right? So basically, the last column is going to have the C column name. C column. That is about it. I hope you guys got it. I mean, that's the whole point of writing this df.columns equal to list. and storing the value inside it. Okay. Then your different, a function that we are coming to, that is the whole point of this slide. So this def function one is basically like what is going to take in is a column. So any structure, or basically whatever function that you want to create, it has a specific syntax. Okay. So the syntax of creating a function is basically that you have to first define it with the def keyword. So this def keyword will basically act as a notification for Python that basically, okay, this def is basically going to create a function out for you. And based on this def keyword, whatever you type after it is basically going to constitute, or basically going to define a function. So whatever name I am counting here, function one, that is going to be the name of the function that I have to call for the execution of your function. So let's say if I'm calling it sum, if in some case, this is referred to basically as assigning a function or defining a function. Then I want to call it out here at the bottom. If I want to call it out here from function one, then that is what I will call with this same name. So if I'm renaming this as sum, I have to again call this as well as this call with the same name, that is going to be my sum. Got it? That is about it of what is this function syntax while assigning. So after you have assigned the sum, what will happen is, after assigning out here, you will secondly have to, just give me a second. After assigning out here, you will have to first and foremost deduct, or basically reduce your function that you're typing. You don't have to write this comment. These comments are basically for the purpose of going to be able to store your. There was something, the meeting ended, and I actually, yeah, guys, there is some disconnection from the same. I'll just share my screen. Yes, so I hope my screen is now visible. All right. So as I was mentioning, we'll just come back to this example. So up until what we had done is we had created a function. It's basically going to, yeah, what we had done is we have created a data frame. It's going to store your data. Okay. After that, what we had done is, yeah, we had started by using this data frame, which is going to be data is equal to np.array. And based on the data frame, what we had done, first thing is we had stored an array in the format of this data variable. After taking this array, it is going to store your all of the data in the format of this rows, comma, columns. That is going to 1, 2, 3, 4. So your one number will go over here, 2 out here. Similarly, you get the idea, right? Like this columns. Next, when you want to actually store and like this in the format of a like SQL table, or in the format of like a like database, then you actually have to convert this into a data frame. Okay. So for doing that, what we had done is we had taken this data variable and we had assigned this period data frame. So that, like, as I mentioned earlier itself, this data frame keyword is basically a function. So the data frame function, what it does is it takes your any kind of like a list, or like a list of lists, and converts that into like a SQL table. So here I have like index one will be this column index, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. And same way, you'll also have a row index out here. This row index is basically how you query your data. Okay. And based on how you query this data, you'll be able to like call the data when you want. So whenever what we are actually going to do it out in the function is we're going to find the value that it returns. Add all of them and find the half value of that sum. So let's say the value of 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Add all of these together, the value comes out to be 10. What our function is going to do is we take the total value of this sum and it will divide this by 2. Okay. That is the whole point of this function. So, I mean, what up until we have done is we have taken a data variable and we have stored it as a numpy array. After that, I mean, what you can think of this as a list of lists. And then what we're doing with DP or data frame is we're actually converting this into a data frame, which is like a SQL database compatible data type. And after converting that, we are giving the list of column name, which is going to be A, B, and C for our set. It's going to be column A, going to be column C, B, and we see column C. Up until here, you have cleared, right? Should be clear up until now. And then what we are doing basically is we are going to take in the value of your function that is going to be passed as a column. This is like a parameter for now. Just leave it for now. Then we'll come back to this when we will discuss about the parameters. So here we have defined the function name. It can be anything. In this case, we can, whatever we call it out here is the same thing that we should be calling when you are actually getting the function to be called. Okay. So here function one is basically the name that we have given. You can give it anything. So that this data frame is also nothing but a function name like this. So data frame can be imagined like def data frame, and you're passing in a list, and based on that list, it is able to compute and give you the return value. Got it? So what this is also doing is what we are doing in these two lines is basically we have defined a new variable called VAL that is going to be a value variable. What will that do? This value variable is basically going to first take out the sum of all the values that are there in this column. So here we are passing the df A column. So the A column will have all the first elements of this list. So you can take an example of this 100, 11, 45, 76. We'll add all of this together. So you just calculate and let me know whatever it is, whatever it is, 200 something. And based on whatever is the sum you have calculated, what the final division will do is it will divide by 2. And whatever value you will get, it will be returned. That's the whole point of the function, like I explained, right? If you have 4 numbers out here, and that will just add all of them together and divide it by 2 and get you the middle value, whatever the middle value is. In this case, it will be 5. So the function input will be 5. Whatever it is, the whole gist of this was explaining what a function is. So now we come to the syntax of the functions. So as I said, the first thing you remember is that this, whatever you pass after the def function, is basically going to be the name of your function, right? This is going to be a function name. And what you pass inside of this function name when you are assigning this function is going to be parameters. So parameter is basically how you will be able to look at that function and what are you going to pass inside that function. If you see out here in the function one, when we are calling the function one, we are passing the parameter, which is the data frame's first column, right? The data frame's first column is what? This 1 to 100, I mean 100, 11, all of this is the first column of my data frame, right? So that will be like an input to this function as a parameter. That is about parameter. Then what we are passing inside of this is basically your definition or whatever you can say, like a explanation of what your function is going to do. That is called like the documentation of the function or the document string of that function. That is basically what the function is going to do in simpler words as an explanation. Then what we will pass is the actual main function's logic in the function suite. So here what we have passed the logic that, okay, I want to have the variable stored called VAL, and that variable is going to store the sum of all the like values of this column, and it will sum and divide it by 2. That is all about the val variable, and whatever value you will get, you will return it as a VAL. That is going to be your function's logic. It will be stored in the function suite. And finally, whatever value you want to output or whatever you want to give it to the main code will be passed with the return expression. If you remember in the last class itself, we had learned about what is the return expression, right? Return expression is nothing but actually going to be as a keyword that is going to pass out something, or it will be exporting or outputting something that you're taking in the function, right? So this is about functions. If you have any doubts with regards to functions or how do you actually use functions with the help of these libraries like NumPy and Pandas, you can ask right away before we start with the different other modules. Yes, you have any doubts? Anyone, if you have any doubts, you can just raise your hand and ask your doubts. Yes, anyone any doubts? We have learned about pandas and and data frame. Similarly, we also went through the data types of NumPy and NumPy array.